Hey Defenders, welcome back. In this video, I want to show you guys how we can take advantage of Cuckoo's API to help us automate our malware analysis. Cortex actually has a built-in analyzer specifically for Cuckoo, so once we get Cuckoo's API up and running, we'll be able to use Cortex to submit files or URLs to Cuckoo that we want Cuckoo to analyze. So stick around and we'll jump into it. Alright, so first we need to get Cuckoo listening for API requests. By default, that is not something that is enabled, but we can start it up similar to how we did with our web UI, like what you see here. So you'll need to jump back into your virtual environment. So I'm on this guy, and I'll say work on cuckoo-test, and let me open up Cuckoo's documentation. And so I'll just search here for API. Here we go, REST API. And we'll be able to start it with just this simple command. So we have Cuckoo up and running. Let me do it, if config, so I can grab that. Oh, one thing to note actually real quick. So if we jump into our cuckoo.conf file that we have here, you'll see this API token. I believe this is automatically generated when we do our cuckoo init, which is the command we ran in a few previous videos. So this should be generated for you already. You could of course set this to your own value if you want, but you'll have to make sure that you have a copy of this so that the API will actually accept your request. So I'll go ahead and just paste that into Notepad just so I have that. And I'll exit out of that. And okay, let's go ahead and get this started. So we can start the API with the simple Cuckoo API, and then we'll specify the host. And I always like to just use the straight IP address, just force of habit, I guess for me. You could use the local host or 0.0.0 tells it to listen on any interface. But I'll specify this IP address and this port I'll use. You can use a custom port as well. You just have to make sure it's not being used by another process, or else you'll get an error. So if we start that, we should see it now running. Okay, so that looks good. And now really all we'll need to do is, it's actually pretty straightforward. So we'll go back into Cortex. We can search for Cuckoo. And we'll enable the file analysis and the URL analysis. So for URL, we'll point to where our Cuckoo server is listening on, which will be this guy and this port here. Our token will refer to our API token, so I'll copy this, paste this in here. I'm gonna set verify SSL cert to false, and it's not even listening on HTTPS anyways, but so this option probably doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna set it to false just in case, and that's it. So that looks good, so I'll save that. And then I will do the same for the URL analysis as well. So, and this is referring to the two options that we have, right? So we can submit URLs or hashes, or we can submit files. So URLs and hashes have a separate analyzer than the file analysis does. And I think that's just because of calls that Cortex is making under the hood. So they've just separated the two out. So again, we'll post our token, and let me grab the URL again. All right, and I'll set that to false as well and save that. All right, and let's go ahead and give it a test. So I'll put the terminal running the API out to the side, and then I'll do the one that's running Cuckoo out to the side as well. And okay, that looks good. So I'll select new analysis. I'll do a data type. I'll just do a URL, and I'll say youtube.com. And I'll select our analyzer here, and we'll hit start, and that should now hopefully kick this off. Okay, so it made the request, but it looks like came back with a failure. Okay, unexpected error. Okay, let's dig into the logs here. Error in app, okay, blah, blah, blah. Request object has no attribute. Okay, let me jump into this file here. And, oh, so I'll quit out of the API there. So my API is now no longer running. And let's open this file that it reported an error on. What did I do there? Oh, I didn't specify a text editor. Oh. Alright, there we go. Okay. Oh, you know what I bet it is? I bet it's related to this JSONify pretty print. I bet that's what it is. So let me change this from true to false. Save that. I will restart the API. And okay, let's make that same request. So URL. Oh, I'll say URL. And we'll try youtube.com. Select this guy, and okay, we didn't get an error, so that's good. Okay, guest is running. Oh, okay. Oh, it's actually, oh, that's interesting. So the last request actually worked. It actually ran the analysis, but the API came back with an error, which of course isn't great because that's what we'll see within Cortex. So, but this, after making that change within that app.py file, it looks like this is running better. So, assuming that that looks okay, it looks like this is actually running. So, we view this. Okay, it's still running. If we go back to Cuckoo, we should see this guy running, and yep, sure enough, we do. Okay. So far it looks good. What's needed for this to finish running, and then we should get our report back within Cortex, which of course is important, right? Because we're not going to be, we want to automate the Cortex submission as well, and we'll get into videos later down the line doing those steps, like fully automating everything for us. We're still, manually telling Cortex, hey, we want to run this job. But it's of course important first to actually make sure the integration is working as expected. And if you haven't checked out the previous video, we integrated Suricata with Cuckoo. So make sure to check that out if you haven't already. I'll go ahead and link it in the top right of this video. All right, it looks like, so that's completed. Now Suricata is running. And once Suricata finishes, we should then see our status within Cortex come back as complete, and then we should be good to go. And then we'll try the same thing for a file as well. All right, so it looks like that's completed. So if we hit this with a refresh, well, it still says in progress. Maybe it's just waiting. Maybe I'll run another GET request here in a sec to get the status. Okay, it looks like it has. So now if we refresh, this probably is now a success. Okay, cool. So if we view this, now we can see all of the data around this event, which is pretty sweet, right? We're getting all the domains that it extracted. There are no Suricata alerts, so we won't see those here. I'll try again with that file that I did in the last video where it hit on a suspicious DNS query. So I'll try that, and we'll see what that output looks like here as well. But so far it looks good. We're getting our score back. It just has flagged as a 2.8, but is not saying that it's necessarily malicious by any means. So this looks pretty good. But really, what we're wanting to do is be able to enable Cortex to make these API calls. And all right, so now let's try to upload a file. So I'll select new analysis again. I will just select file. I know this is malware, so this should give us some good hits here. And then I will select the file analysis. So instead of URL analysis, we're using the file one because of our data type. And if we select start, they should make the post. Okay, that looks good. Which should now start the task. Yeah, so starting analysis of files, so that looks good. So hopefully once this finishes and comes back to us, we should see a nice little report here. That probably looks pretty bad. Looks pretty scary. Okay, looks like it had an error on one of the files. Hopefully Cortex just disregards that and doesn't output that as like a failure. I guess we'll see. Fingers crossed. But it looks like the processing is done. Now it's running Suricata. Okay, looks like it's completed. So we should now just be able to refresh. Or actually, we probably need. So Cortex will make another call to get the results. So I don't know what that timing is set to internally, so we'll probably see results once we see the post, or once we see the new GET request from Cortex, which should happen in a few minutes, I assume. Maybe every minute. Actually, yeah, it looks like a request is made every minute by Cortex to get the latest status. So within a few seconds here, we should see the new request. And okay, yep, so it's come through now, so that should now have a status of success. Okay, cool. So it did disregard that error. If we view this, okay, cool. We immediately see that it is very malicious. This is an 8.2 out of 10. So Cuckoo is identifying this as some bad stuff. And we get some signatures that Cuckoo hit on. So it creates executable, drops binaries. So let's actually go to the Cuckoo report and see what this guy looks like. I'll select this guy here. Yeah, so this is our guy, 8.2 out of 10. Steals information from local internet browsers. That's interesting. So it looks like it's trying to read registry files to get information where browsers store data within the registry. Creates executables. Oh, here we see that bat file. It's interesting. Drops a binary and executes it. Yeah, so again, that's that bat file we saw that the error was on. Deletes executed files. So it looks like it tries to cover its tracks after running. So that's interesting. Communicates with host for which no DNS query was performed. Oh, so it's just trying to reach. So it's trying to that's kind of interesting. It's trying to circumvent. Maybe if you're ingesting like DNS logs, right? It's trying to circumvent actually making a DNS query to your DNS server. It's just telling the host that it has infected, hey, I want you to just reach straight out to this IP address. You're not going to do any DNS queries for it. So that's interesting. That's kind of smart. Connects to an IP address that is no longer responding. So perhaps this was a command and control type of server that is now down and is no longer being maintained by the attackers. Harvesting credentials. Yeah, so a lot of nasty stuff that this malware was doing. But as you can see, it was pretty easy for us to now submit via Cuckoo's API. We can submit either a URL, a hash, or a file, which is pretty awesome. And we can also, in future videos, add more automation and more integration into this, right? So we can integrate the Hive with this as well, so we can kick off this analysis just from the Hive. Again, we want the Hive to kind of be our single pane of glass in terms of like us investigating different types of alerts. And we can use that to tell Cortex, right, to run a Cuckoo scan. And then now that we have Cortex integrated with Cuckoo's API, we can now allow for that integration and automation to take place and happen. So More on that in future videos to come, so stay tuned, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one.